They lived on islands they could not escape. They spoke a language no outsider could understand. And when Europeans finally met them, they looked like people who did not belong to Africa at all. When Castilian forces arrived in the Canary Islands at the beginning of the 15th century, they expected familiar patterns. What they found instead shattered every assumption about human history. A society locked in the Stone Age. No metal tools. No ships. No memory of ever arriving. The Guanche people lived surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, yet possessed no technology to cross it. They had no harbors, no boats, no tradition of navigation. And still, they built stone monuments, practiced complex rituals, preserved their dead through advanced mummification, and carried DNA older than written history itself. Blonde hair. Light eyes. European physical traits. On volcanic islands just off the coast of North Africa. This is not a myth. It is a genetic mystery. And understanding it forces us to confront one of the strangest chapters in human prehistory. The Canary Islands rise from the Atlantic like volcanic sentinels. 7 major islands scattered across hundreds of kilometers of open ocean, yet lying less than 100 kilometers from the African coast. Geologically, they are young. Born from volcanic eruptions beginning around 20 million years ago. Tenerife, the largest island, is dominated by Mount Tide, a massive volcano towering more than 12,000 feet above sea level. These are not gentle tropical landscapes. They are harsh, black volcanic terrains shaped by fire, wind, and isolation. And for more than 2,000 years, possibly far longer, these islands were home to a people with no way to leave. When archaeologists began systematic studies of Guanche settlements in the 19th century, they encountered something unprecedented. A human population that had lived in complete isolation for millennia. No shipwrecks. No maritime tools. No evidence of seafaring of any kind. The Guanche fished only from the shore. They never sailed beyond shallow waters. Even islands visible from one another remained culturally and linguistically isolated. Each island developed its own dialect. Its own social structure. Its own traditions. They lived within sight of their neighbors, yet never met them. This raised an impossible question. How did they get there? The Atlantic currents around the Canary Islands are unforgiving. The Canary Current flows south along the African coast, while persistent trade winds push vessels westward into open ocean. Accidental drift from Africa does not carry you to the islands. It carries you past them. Reaching the Canaries requires deliberate navigation and seaworthy vessels. Yet the Guanche possessed neither. A Stone Age population living on islands that Stone Age technology should not have been able to reach. This paradox remained unsolved for over a century. Until genetics entered the story. Modern geneticists describe the Guanche as a genetic time capsule. A population so isolated that it preserved DNA signatures erased everywhere else. In 2017, researchers sequenced ancient DNA extracted from Guanche mummies dated between roughly 100 and 400 CE. What they found rewrote the narrative. The Guanche were primarily descended from North African Berber populations. Their maternal lineages included haplogroups such as U6 and rare variants of H1, lineages rooted deep in prehistoric North Africa. But embedded within that ancestry was something unexpected. Ancient European DNA. Not recent admixture. Not introduced by Spanish colonization. This ancestry traced back to the last ice age. Historical records from the Spanish conquest suddenly made sense. Chroniclers described tall individuals, some over 6 feet in height. They noted fair skin, blonde or red hair, and blue or green eyes. At the time, Europeans struggled to explain what they were seeing. Some believed the Guanche were survivors of lost European voyages. Others invoked Atlantis or biblical myths. But genetics provided a far older explanation. During the last ice age, roughly 20,000 years ago, much of Europe was buried beneath glaciers. Human populations retreated south into refuges where survival remained possible. One of those refuges extended across Iberia and into North Africa, during a period when the Sahara was green and passable. These populations carried genetic traits associated with lighter skin, hair, and eyes. Traits that later spread across Europe as the ice retreated. But not everyone went north. Some groups remained in North Africa. And when the Sahara dried out around 5,000 years ago, those populations were fragmented, absorbed, or erased by later migrations. All except one. The Guanche. Isolated by the ocean, they avoided the genetic mixing that transformed the mainland. They preserved an ancient blend of Ice Age European and prehistoric North African ancestry. Their DNA shows extreme founder effects. Rare genetic variants became common simply because no new populations entered the gene pool. Lactose tolerance reached unusually high levels, suggesting long-term dairy pastoralism. Variants linked to pigmentation matched those found in ancient European remains but are rare in modern North Africa. The Guanche represent a snapshot of a vanished genetic landscape. A version of North Africa that no longer exists. But DNA alone does not explain everything. The Guanche mummified their dead. Across caves in Tenerife and Gran Canaria, archaeologists discovered hundreds of mummies preserved with astonishing precision. Skin intact. Hair still present. Facial features clearly recognizable. Yet their method was entirely different from Egypt. They did not remove organs. They did not use natron salts. Instead, bodies were dried using sun exposure, volcanic ash, plant resins, and tightly wrapped in goat skins before being placed in dry mountain caves. This was not preservation for an afterlife. It was ancestor veneration. A way of keeping the dead present among the living. The parallel development of mummification in isolated cultures raises an unsettling possibility. Some ideas may be far older than civilization itself. The Guanche also built stone monuments. Step pyramids at Guimar. Circular enclosures. Standing stones and burial cairns. Many are aligned with solar events, particularly solstices. This suggests astronomical awareness, seasonal tracking, and ritual knowledge. How did a people without metal tools or writing systems preserve such complexity? The answer may lie in deep memory. The Sahara itself is filled with Neolithic stone monuments dating back thousands of years, built before desertification erased those cultures. The Guanche may have carried fragments of that world with them, frozen in isolation long after it vanished elsewhere. Their beliefs centered on the sun. They worshipped Majek, the solar deity. They feared Guayota, a volcanic spirit believed to dwell within Mount Tide. Eruptions were interpreted as cosmic struggles between light and darkness. This solar mythology mirrors belief systems found across ancient North Africa and prehistoric Europe. The Guanche preserved it unchanged for millennia. Until the Spanish arrived. The conquest of the Canary Islands lasted nearly a century. The Guanche resisted fiercely using stone weapons and intimate knowledge of the terrain. But disease proved unstoppable. Smallpox and measles devastated populations with no immunity. By the 17th century, the Guanche language was extinct. Their religion erased. Their society dismantled. But their genes survived. Today, roughly half of the genetic ancestry of modern Canarians traces back to the Guanche, especially through maternal lineages. The people disappeared. The DNA endured. The Guanche were not a myth. They were not an anomaly. They were human beings carrying ancient genetic memory into the modern world. A reminder that history is not linear. It branches, isolates, and sometimes preserves truths we nearly lose. And every one of us carries echoes of that same past in our blood. Because DNA never forgets. If this exploration of genetic history fascinated you, share it with someone who loves untold human stories. Have you visited the Canary Islands? Have you uncovered unexpected ancestry in your own DNA? History lives inside us all. And some stories survive only if we choose to remember them. I'll see you in the next video. Please like and subscribe to this channel.